7 bone-chilling true horror stories that haunt you at midnight forever. It was nearly midnight when the stories began, echoing in the hearts of those brave enough to listen. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows, turning the rustic cabin into a realm of the unknown. Each tale whispered spoke not just of fear, but of the absolute terror that gnawed at the edges of sanity, making you wonder, what if it was you next? The first was about a girl who disappeared on the way to school. They searched all night, calling her name into the darkness, but she was never found. What they discovered weeks later would chill them to the bone. A broken doll, propped up against a tree, its smile crooked and eyes wide. They say she had a secret, and the doll held the key. Then there was the legend of the old Miller house, left to rot, silent and alone on a forgotten street. People swore they heard laughter echoing from its empty halls, every night, at precisely 3 a.m. Some claimed to have seen shadowy figures beyond cracked windows, dancing like phantoms. That house had a life of its own. A shiver ran down your spine just thinking about it. Neighbors reported lights flickering as if something was trying to break through the void. Just imagine standing out there, throat tight, heart pounding, wondering if tonight was the night you would finally unveil the secret behind those haunted walls. As the night deepened, the stories intensified, and an unsettling hush fell over the gathered crowd. They could feel the tension in the air, thick and electric. Was it just the cold? Or was something watching from the darkened corners? Gasps erupted as someone recalled the tale of a man, driven mad by whispers in the dark. He would wake to find his family gone, replaced by strange faces and hollow eyes staring back. What had driven him to madness? The answer lay within the shadows, a truth so horrifying it lingered in the air like smoke. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With hearts racing, the audience leaned in closer. It was as if the dark was whispering a promise, a secret meant for their ears only. What might today's tale unveil? As the next story unfurled, they held their breath, waiting for the words that could change everything. Would they dare step into the living formlessness of the unknown that lurked just beyond the firelight? As one more chilling tale wove its way through the night, a sudden creak echoed from outside, raising goosebumps along their arms. What was out there, just beyond their sight? And would they be brave enough to find out? A heavy silence filled the cabin, an almost suffocating weight that pressed down on them all. The fire crackled, the flames flickering as if they too sensed the tension rising. Outside, the wind howled like a warning, rattling the windows and ghosting through the cracks in the walls. Everyone felt it, the sensation of being watched, of unseen eyes lingering just beyond their realm, waiting to pounce. "Let us talk about the old bus that rolled through these parts," began a newcomer, his voice low and deliberate. Eyes turned toward him, a mixture of intrigue and dread. "You see, 20 years ago, a group of kids on a school trip never made it back. Their bus broke down in the middle of nowhere, just like this place." He paused for effect, glancing around the circle. The group leaned closer, breaths held. They decided to walk, thinking they could reach the town if they just kept moving. But one by one, they started to disappear, their laughter fading into nothingness. The storyteller's eyes darkened, shadows playing across his face. When searchers finally found the wreckage days later, all that was left was the bus, dusty and alone in the forest. No kids, just their backpacks strewn about, like offerings to something sinister that required a sacrifice. A chill coursed through the crowd. Could it be true? Their rational minds fought back against the fear, but the eerie night allowed little room for reason. He continued, his tone haunting. "Some say those kids are still out there, trapped between dimensions. On quiet nights, if you listen closely, you can hear their echoes." Laughter turned to wails as they searched for a path back home. Just as he finished, another creaking noise snapped through the cabin, louder this time. Heads turned toward the door. The laughter of the kids felt like a ghostly wind brushing past them, echoing off the walls. Maybe it's just the wind, someone whispered, but all eyes remained fixed on the door, that old wooden barrier guarding them against the unknown. Don't you dare open that, a woman's voice trembled. Whatever's out there, it's not good. But curiosity hung in the air like a thick fog. The storyteller raised an eyebrow, nudging a skeptical friend. Go on, check it out. You'd be the hero of the night, right? A heavy breath, a hasty exchange of looks. What choice would they make? Suddenly, one brave soul stood up, driven by a mixture of bravado and fear. Gripping the door handle, they hesitated, glancing back at the group. If something's out there, I'll get to the bottom of it. I can't let fear win. Her words echoed in the charged atmosphere. As she pulled the door open, a gust swept in, extinguishing half the cabin's light and sending adrenaline racing through everyone's veins. The darkness beyond loomed, swallowing the beam from their flickering flashlight. Wait! Someone shouted, but it was too late. She stepped into the void, the doors swinging shut behind her. Only silence remained. The remaining crowd huddled closer, each heartbeat thudding like a drum against the oppressive quiet. They looked at each other, eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. What do we do? Someone murmured, panic seeping into their voice, and just then, from outside the door, a chilling laugh echoed, a voice that was too familiar, too childlike, and yet so very wrong. Was it the mermaids of madness? Or something worse lying in wait? The next decision would define them. Would they venture out to save her, or seal their fates like those lost souls from so many years ago? In the shadows, the truth trembled on the edge of revelation. What was really out there, and what had they unleashed? The wind shrieked outside like a banshee, drowning out any chance of coherent thought. The groups sat frozen in the dim light, hearts hammering wildly in their chests. Eyes darted from the door to one another, sharing unspoken fears that buzzed in the charged air. Should we call for her? A voice piped up, shaky and unsure. It was a question, but it sounded more like a plea wrapped in desperation. She'll come back. She has to. The harsh whisper came from the storyteller, but his eyes betrayed his doubt. He glanced again at the door, realizing the dark shadows on the other side seemed to stretch and wriggle like a living thing. The chilling laughter rang out again, mingling with the howling wind. This time, it felt closer, as if it was right outside, almost as if the childlike glee was taunting them. Several in the cabin flinched, skin prickling, and one woman covered her mouth, stifling a scream. She would never leave us. A man's voice trembled, but the bravado in it fell flat. The reality was settling in, thick and painful. The girl was gone. And every second they stayed put, they felt her absence growing heavier. Someone has to go after her, a nervous murmured suggestion echoed through the group, hanging in the air like a noose tightening around each of their throats. It's just a game, the storyteller said, but his voice cracked just enough for them to hear the tremor. She's playing. She knows what she's doing. But was it a game, or was it a dare against the darkness that lured them? The thought sliced through the air like wind through the trees, a sharp reminder of what lurked outside. Did you hear that? A voice broke the suffocating silence. It had come from the far corner of the room. They all strained to listen. A faint sound, like the soft rustle of clothing, seemed to drift from behind the closed door. A chill washed over them, a lingering sensation that sent shivers down their spines. One by one, they turned to look at the door. Maybe a girl broke through the tension, her voice almost hopeful. Maybe she's trying to come back. Maybe she needs us to pull her in. A path was set before them, fraught with danger, illuminated by empathy or stupidity. Each one was torn between loyalty and fear, their instincts screaming against the void that swallowed her whole. I'm going, another voice declared, shaking off the chains of fear. I'm not leaving her behind. The conviction was bold but shaky. It spurred another into action, and soon there were two heads nodding together in solemn agreement. Let us, the storyteller hesitated, but something in their eyes shut down his protests. There was no stopping them now. He watched as two figures moved toward the door, their footsteps hesitant but determined. Wait! he shouted, but it was drowned out by the laughter outside, growing more frenetic, more sinister. The childlike tones warped into something dark and mocking, a cacophony that echoed through the walls of the cabin. With a quick glance back to gather courage, the two stepped into the darkness. The door creaked open, exhaling a breath of icy air that hit them like a cold wave of dread. And before anyone could blink, the door slammed shut behind them. Panic surged. The remaining group huddled together, breathing heavily. Shadows danced across the cabin, taunting them. Then they heard a scatter of footsteps outside the door, a mad rush of chaos followed by a silence that felt menacing. Did they find her? Someone whispered, trembling. No one dared answer. Instead, they listened intently, blood thrumming painfully in their ears. The weight of the moments hung heavy, bracing them for the unknown. What if another voice croaked? But before they could finish, the door creaked open once more, and around the shadowy threshold, two figures emerged, gasping, trembling. Something draped over their arms, gleaming dully in the faint light. She's one of them started, terror stalking their features. She's not alone. A pulse of dread shot through the cabin. What had they invited inside? And how far were they willing to go to confront it? The two figures stumbled into the dim light of the cabin, their faces pale and stricken with an emotion that twisted in the pit of everyone's stomach: fear. The object draped over their arms swung gently, revealing itself with each cautious breath they took. Please tell me that's not what I think it is. A voice quivered from the back of the room. Eyes widened in horror as the shape became clearer, the truth settling like a heavy weight in the air. It was a doll. An eerily lifelike doll with bright glassy eyes that seemed to reflect the flickering light. It has her hair, gasped one of the figures, their voice barely a whisper. The air turned stale, the taste of dread filling their lungs. One person staggered back against the wall, chest heaving. No, no, no. This can't be happening. Panic crescendoed, weaving through the group like a threatening storm. The doll, seemingly innocent, felt sinister in the context of the chaos. What happened out there? The storyteller's voice finally broke through the choking terror. Where is she? We saw her, the other figure gasped, irrationally searching for the right words. But she was with something. A shadow. It had her, but it wasn't her. It was different. Different? It was the storyteller again, his voice low, barely audible over the howling wind seeping through the cracks in the cabin. Her laughter, the figure clutched the doll tighter, as if it were a lifeline. It sounded twisted, wrong. It was like she was playing, but in a way that was sick. A chilling silence slid over the group. They waited, anticipation pricking their nerves as the wind howled an ominous chorus outside. Why would she take that? A woman spoke up, pointing at the doll. Maybe she thought it would bring her back, the other figure said, their eyes wide with desperation. But it tried to lure us. Like some kind of sick game, a rumble of thunder echoed overhead, rattling the wooden beams. It felt like a warning. The storyteller stepped forward, the dread settling deeper in his gut. What did you mean by not alone? Are you saying? Suddenly, a shrill shriek pierced the air, sending everyone into a frenzied panic, hearts racing, blood pounding in their ears. They all turned towards the door, which had begun to groan faintly, shifting on its hinges as if something was pushing against it from the outside. The laughter returned, this time more distorted, echoing through the walls like a lunatic symphony. Get away from the door! Someone shouted, but it felt too late. They were already paralyzed by fear, unable to comprehend the looming shape outside. The energy in the cabin shifted, morphing into a thick tension like a taut string on the verge of snapping, and then, against the grinding dissonance, the door burst open, revealing a tall silhouette. It stood cloaked in shadows, features obscured, but you could feel its malevolence creeping into the room. Where is she? It whispered, the voice undeniably sweet yet dripping with something sinister. Instinctively, they huddled together, the air electrified. But one question hung heavily: was it truly a part of her, returning to reclaim what was lost? The other figure took a fraction of a step forward, trembling. It's just a joke, right? They stuttered, eyes darting to the dolls still clutched in their hands. You just want to play, the silhouette laughed. The laughter twisted and turned, morphing into a low growl, and reality began to slip. Play forever, it rasped, hovering closer. And then everyone felt it, a presence. Something crawling under their skin, something insatiable, hungry. Run! The command rang out, but it was too late. What would they confront next? What darkness had they truly awakened? The screams still echoed in their ears, a dissonant reminder that whatever was outside had crossed the threshold into their lives. They scattered, hearts pounding like war drums against their chests. The storyteller was the first to reach the back window, desperate fingers tugging at the splintered frame. He shoved it open, but the wind howled as if to mock his effort. The trees outside stood tall and menacing, their twisted branches clawing at the sky, obscuring any semblance of escape. "Don't let it get you!" a voice cried from the dim corners of the cabin, but panic had already wormed its way into every breath. "It's not just a doll!" the figure with the doll shrieked, eyes wide. "It's more than that, it's a part of her." The atmosphere thickened with despair, the edges of their once familiar reality fraying under the weight of the unknown. Every shadow seemed to pulse, every creak of the cabin amplified by their fear. They were trapped, no way out. "Maybe we can reason with it," said the woman, clenching her fists in brave defiance despite the trembling of her lip. "Maybe we can give it what it wants." "Are you crazy?" spat another voice. "You think it wants to play games? This isn't some twisted fairy tale. It wants to consume us." "Play," echoed the silhouette, slowly emerging from the threshold, the features still hidden from view. "What are you willing to sacrifice for the game?" That question hung heavy in the air, chilling them more than the winter wind gusting through the cabin. Could they face the reality of their own fears? Would they have to pay a price? The figure holding the doll stepped forward, the lifeless eyes of the doll reflecting the flickering cabin light. "Maybe it is a joke, maybe she just wants us to join her. To play forever." With that, a flash of recognition crossed the storyteller's mind. He remembered how laughter could twist into sorrow, how a child's giggle could mask true intentions. "No," he said, confusion settling into clarity, "it's not just about playing. It's about control." The silhouette perked up, its head tilting in an unnatural way. "Control, yes. A trade, perhaps? What will you offer for your friend back?" The voice dripped with malevolence, coated in a tempting sweetness. A shudder crept through the group. They were running out of time. The shadows began to shift again, swirling in a chaotic dance, creeping closer, brushing against their skin as if testing the waters of their courage. "What if we manifested something to fight back?" the woman suggested, trying to quell the rising tide of desperation. Would faith in the unknown be their salvation or their doom? At that moment, the ground shuddered beneath them. A loud crash echoed outside, shaking the very foundation of the cabin. The walls creaked in response, as though the cabin itself reviled the unfolding madness. "Whatever you do, don't lose it!" yelled the storyteller, but the warning fell on deaf ears. The surrounding darkness flickered, revealing fragments of cruel faces and twisted grins, dancing just beyond comprehension. The figure with the doll took a deep breath, holding it up like an offering. "We can't fight this. Maybe it's time to play," and just like that, the cabin plunged into complete darkness, swallowed by the shadows that clawed at their sanity. Whispers wrapped around them, drowning out any thought of escape, any hope. As they sought answers, they stood at the edge of a precipice. Was there a path back to the light, or had they already embarked on a journey deeper into the abyss? And in that moment of stark uncertainty, a sinister answer began to emerge from the oppressive dark. What if accepting the game was the only way to unveil the true horror awaiting them? What truth would they discover when the darkness finally revealed its cards? The darkness pressed in around them, a living entity that tightened its grip with every passing second. Desperate breaths echoed in the silence, punctuated only by the relentless thumping of their hearts. A chill clawed at their skin, palpable and insistent, as shadows curled and twisted like smoke. "Is everyone here?" whispered the woman, her voice barely above a breath. She reached out, fingers trembling, hoping to feel some solid presence in the abyss. Her mind raced. Were they all trapped together, or had the darkness claimed some of them already? It's just us, mumbled the storyteller, his voice cracking. We have to stay together. But even as he spoke, he felt the fear wrap around him like a heavy blanket, smothering him. Just then, a shrill laughter erupted from the blackness, sharp and cruel, cutting through their fragile resolve. Their pulse quickened as they flinched at the sound, instinctively pressing closer together as if the contact could shield them from what lurked beyond their vision. Did you hear that? A voice cried out, rising hysteria sparking in the dimly lit space. What was that? The game has begun. The echoing voice danced through the cabin, teasing them with a sinister melody. Who dares play? Fear coursed through them, a murky tide that threatened to drown every rational thought. In that moment, the figure with the doll emerged, her features still obscured. The haunting smile stretched just a bit too wide across her face, as if she were relishing the terror that reigned. Would you like to find out what control feels like? She taunted, raising the doll high. The horror in her eyes turned glassy, and yet sparkled with malicious joy. What do you want? The woman shouted back, her voice fierce yet quivering. A taste of sacrifice. The figure with the doll sang, her voice echoing eerily against the cabin's walls. One of you must submit to the shadows. Who will it be? The group turned to one another, dread manifesting in shared glances. No one! Snapped the storyteller. We want to play your twisted game. The laughter returned, mockery swirling through the air. The shadows shivered with delight, leaning in closer, testing their resolve. Do you think you have a choice? The figure hissed, the doll now eerily vibrating in her grasp. Every second you waste here, you invite a greater darkness. Her words lingered, heavy and poisonous, as if drowning their hope. The cabin trembled in response, the walls threatening to breathe. Outside, the wind howled, growing desperate, demanding their allegiance. Let us fight it! Shouted one man, his voice stronger now, rising from the ashes of his fear. What if we combine our strength? There's power in our unity. Unity? The woman echoed, doubt creeping into her voice. What if we end up as sacrifices ourselves? If it wants one, why not more? Taking a deep breath, the storyteller seized the moment. What if we confront our fears head on? We can tear this thing down if we face it together. Silence hung like a guillotine, the unmistakable heaviness of indecision pressing on them. Suddenly an unseen force whipped through the cabin, snatching the doll from its master's grasp. It flew upwards, spinning in the dark as if dancing to a macabre tune, the laughter morphing into wind-whipped screams that echoed in their minds. It's not just a game! The woman screamed, drawing her hands to her mouth. It's a curse! The shadows closed in, darkness swirling violently as if eager to consume. They felt its cold fingers reaching for them, for the softest hearts, for the ones who dared to blink first. Do it now! Shouted the storyteller, determination blazing in his eyes. Hold hands! If we can manifest light. Before he could finish, a blinding flash erupted, slicing through the darkness. It revealed the true contours of their fate, but with it, an overwhelming force surged through the cabin, a flood of choices, consequences unfolding before them. And just like that, as they squinted against the light, something deep within the shadows shrieked, desperate to break free. But in that moment they all had to understand light and darkness were two sides of the same game, and the stakes? They were far beyond what they had ever imagined. Who would take the first plunge into the unknown? The game was far from over. What would they find on the other side? The flash faded but left behind a shimmering afterimage that softened the darkness. For a brief moment, the cabin breathed. Then, the shadows recoiled, hissing like air escaping from a punctured tire, a cacophony of whispers threading through their minds. Do you see? The doll's former guardian gasped, blinking in disbelief as her fingers curled into trembling fists. It's more than a game. If one of us must feed the shadows, we need to find a way to make a choice that doesn't sign our death warrants. We still need to stay together. The storyteller pleaded, eyes wide. He squeezed the hands around him, grounding himself in the human warmth that felt so tenuous now. The light will give us answers. Let us just remember fear can bind us, but so can courage. The wind shrieked once more, rattling the window panes as if the cabin itself were laughing at their bravado, but the strength in their connection pulsed through the air. They ventured forth, gathering their resolve, each heartbeat sinking to form a fragile alliance against the creeping despair. "We can't let it break us," the woman whispered, her pulse racing. "What if we don't sacrifice? What if we refuse?" But as soon as the words came out, the walls of the cabin warped, bending like an overcooked spaghetti noodle. The light around them dimmed, swirling back into darkness, blotting out everything they had hoped for. Suddenly, a chilling voice crawled from the depths, slithering into their ears. Refusal is its own kind of sacrifice. Before they could muster a response, a shadow elongated and solidified into a person, a figure wrapped in darkness, save for eyes that glinted with the bright spark of madness. "Welcome, players, to your reckoning. I am hunger, I am the weight of choice, and I am here to unleash your fears." The hair stood on the back of the woman's neck. "What do you want from us?" she whispered, heart thudding in panic. "I want you to decide," Hunger hissed, a grin stretching unnaturally across his face. "It is not sacrifice but the act of taking responsibility. One of you must step beyond to quell this rage. Who will volunteer for enlightenment?" "Enlightenment? You promise us that?" the man interjected, disbelief stealing his voice. "We're offering ourselves to a monster." "Sacrifice is within us all," Hunger retorted, casting a finger from one to the other until it landed on the storyteller. "Your leader here, or perhaps not? He only speaks of unity. What if he abandons you all?" The storyteller flinched, uncertainty gnawing at him. Was he leading them astray instead of guiding them to safety? Each glance turned to doubt as the shadows expanded with insidious glee. "No! Not him!" the woman shouted, her voice a mix of searching desperation and fierce loyalty. Yet deep down, fear twisted in her gut. What if he faltered? Hunger leaned closer, his voice dripping like poison. "Sometimes the one you trust the most carries the greatest potential for betrayal. What will you choose? Unity or survival?" The air thickened, the weight of their collective dread suffocating all hope. Each heartbeat punctured the tense silence, and they realized a choice must be made. But as they huddled, eyes darting, a sharp scream pierced the stillness, one of their own. A man stumbled backward, terror etched on his features, clutching his head as shadows writhed around him like snakes. "I can't breathe! It's eating me alive!" he shrieked, sinking to the floor, trapped in a swirling vortex of despair. "No! Let him go!" The storyteller frantically reached out, but the shadows grew bolder, snatching him deeper into their grip. At that moment, a figure pounced from the dark, hands gripping the flailing man's shoulders. "We have to help him! We're not giving in!" the woman yelled. "Are you brave enough to face the truth?" Hunger taunted, his gaze dancing over each frightened face. "Bravery isn't fearless. It's knowing what you stand to lose." With the light pulsing in chaotic flashes, they each stood at the cliff's edge of a decision they were petrified to make. "Together, we'll choose," the storyteller shouted, heart pounding in his ears. But as they reached to join hands once more, a crack echoed through the room, and the darkness swelled. The walls trembled violently, distorting their faces as it raged against their unity. Just how far would they go to protect one another? The shadows whispered promises of despair. And amid the chaos, the woman realized the chilling truth: they might have to pay the price of the choices they had left unmade. But who would step into the shadows first? Who would break at the brink of their own fear? As the cabin shook around them, the question lingered: were they ready to face the ultimate choice? The cabin quaked under the power of their unshed fears, and each person felt like they were standing on a precipice teetering dangerously over the edge of the unknown. The horrifying roar of the wind mingled with a low growl that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, as if they were alive, breathless with anticipation. "Focus!" the storyteller shouted, forcing his voice to rise above the chaos. "We can't let fear take us. We need a plan." But even as he spoke, doubt dripped into his thoughts like poison. The woman's fingers twitched as she clutched her friend's hand tightly. "You promised courage." Together, her words faltered, stumbling under the weight of the shadows closing in around them. Together, how do we do that? He whispered back, eyes wide with dread. What if someone has to go into the dark alone? The man, still writhing on the ground, let out another wrenching scream. Help me! Please! The desperation clawed at their chests, an agonizing reminder of the stakes laid out before them. Hunger laughed, the sound echoing like cruel bells in their ears. You all feel it, don't you? The price of trust. Your bonds only grow stronger while the shadows feast. He gestured to the man, still trapped, as the shadows began to crawl further up his body, devouring him with gluttonous hunger. No! Not like this! The woman gasped, fighting back tears. What do we do? The storyteller fought to think clearly. We make a choice. We either give in, or we fight back. But how? Hunger's eyes glinted. Ah, there's the crux. It could be one of you, or all of you. Or perhaps the one who promises unity is destined to sacrifice or betray. The words lashed through them like whips, and the weight of his implications sat heavy. Which of you would dare to throw the rest to the wolves? Who amongst you is willing to step into the shadows to save the bond? The grip of panic twisted through the air like a taut string about to snap. Glances darted around, flitting from one face to the other, each questioning the depths of loyalty and self-preservation. No one! The woman shouted defiantly. We won't let the darkness win. I refuse. But as she cried out, the shadows seemed to curl around her feet, cold and biting. The pain in her stomach surged, twisting tighter. Was she ready to be the one who fought but ultimately lost? I will not lose my friends. Her voice trembled, kindled fear sparking into a roaring flame of defiance. Courage is a tricky companion, Hunger mused with an air of mockery. When the moment arrives, will you fight or will you fold? His stare glinted like a predator sizing up dinner. Across the room, the man's cries became softer, swallowed beneath the encroaching shadows. They could see his face, a mask of terror that twisted with every heartbeat. Their choice loomed, sharp and inevitable. Help him! The storyteller urged, his resolve hardening. We choose together. We stand together. But as they huddled together, the air thick with fear and trepidation, an ear-piercing screech sliced through the tension like glass shattering. The cabin rocked, and the lights flickered violently, flickering in and out like a dying heartbeat, illuminating faces twisted with both determination and dread. Make your decision! Hunger rasped, his tone sinister and gleeful. Will you embrace unity or will sacrifice define you? What will you choose? With time slipping away like sand between their fingers, they held their breath, awaiting an answer to the haunting question: who among them would break first? Would they stand and fight, or yield in fear? The shadows danced with anticipation, and in that harrowing moment, one thing became undeniably clear: the choice they all faced was only the beginning of a terrifying revelation. But would it be the finale they feared or a new nightmare just waiting to unfold? The room held its breath. Time twisted and stretched, taut as a wire ready to snap. The stakes were insurmountable. They all felt it, the suffocating dread, the gnawing uncertainty. A promise of unity floated uneasily in the air, but it was tainted by the sinister laughter that echoed through the cabin. Hunger's gaze was predatory, each trapped soul visibly racked with turmoil and indecision. Help! The man cried again, his voice breaking like glass. The shadows skittered up his legs, voracious and relentless. The remaining three exchanged frantic glances. Do we let him go? Whispered the storyteller, his heart hammering against his ribs. Never! The woman shot back, defiance like fire in her eyes. Yet even as the words left her mouth, the terror of what they might have to do gnawed at her insides. We can't let hunger decide our fates, her friend insisted, desperation twisting her features. If we sacrifice him, what does that make us? Are we really willing to doom one to save the others? But in the shadows, the man's face twisted in agony, his pained eyes pleading for salvation. The wind howled outside, drowning them in a symphony of chaos, as if warning them of the consequences of their inaction. Each second felt heavier, teetering on the brink of calamity. Together or apart? It's your choice, Hunger taunted. Together. the woman shouted, but doubt clung tightly to her voice, deepening her anxiety. What's the plan? Before anyone could respond, a loud crash erupted from the cabin's door. Splintering wood echoed like a gunshot, and a creature, large and dark, surged into view. It was a monstrous silhouette, all jagged edges and glistening teeth, a maw wide enough to swallow them whole. The shadows reared back, as if even they feared this new horror. Not now! The storyteller yelled, pushing the others behind him. We need to act. The woman stepped forward, trembling. We can distract it. Draw it away while we save him. With a roar of defiance, the storyteller hurled a nearby chair at the beast. It struck hard, a hollow thud echoing in the cabin as the creature pivoted towards them, eyes blazing with fury. Now! He cried, recognizing the only fleeting chance. But the man on the ground was still ensnared, the creeping shadows dragging him deeper into despair. Push him out. Grab his hands, the woman ordered, amidst the chaos. But dread knotted her stomach. Would it be enough? Could they save him without losing themselves? As they lunged toward him, they felt the unyielding grip of fate tightening around them. Could they really fight back against such insatiable darkness? The beast lunged, snapping jaws ready to consume, and with a deafening roar, it lunged. In one split second, it hurled itself toward the storyteller, and chaos erupted. Amidst the swirling shadows and chaotic cries, the woman's heart raced as she clutched the man's hands tightly, trying to pull him free. But the shadows retaliated, drawing a scream from him, echoing in the cabin as her grip faltered. Hold on! She screamed, her voice battling against the cacophony around them. But could she keep this up? Just as the darkness threatened to sweep them all under, a blinding light flickered from outside the faintest sliver of hope. But more importantly, a glint of realization pierced through her fear. In the blinding moment of clarity, she understood. They could not only fight the beast outside but the darkness within themselves as well. Yet, as the ground shook and the horror unfolded, she felt a chilling certainty nestle in her heart. The battle was far from over. In the depths of despair, an unsettling truth lurked, ready to emerge like a wretched specter. What had they truly bargained for? What dark corners lay waiting beyond the shadows? And as the beast snarled, teeth glimmering like cold steel, the cabin trembled once more with destiny ready to unveil its most ruthless hands. What terrifying vengeance awaited them if they were to falter, if they did not find the light in the chaos? Despair loomed as the story unfolded deeper into the abyss. The next choice would be theirs. Their very lives hung in the balance, tangled in the relentless shadows. The only question left was, how far would each of them go to reclaim the light? Panic surged through the cabin like a tidal wave, drowning their screams in a sea of terror. Darkness wrapped around them, thick and suffocating, as the creature's growl vibrated through the wooden walls. They huddled together, breaths shallow and trembling, grappling with the reality of their situation. Don't let go! The woman shouted, her voice hoarse with fear as she tightened her grip around the man's hands. His panic-stricken eyes reflected the same desperation she felt inside. Shadows writhed around them, and the air trembled with the chilling promise of despair. Keep pulling! The storyteller urged, his heart racing like a drum. The beast lunged again, its feral snarls punctuating the night, sending chills down their spines. But they were fueled by something deeper now, something fierce and unyielding. As they pulled, the woman felt a rush of warmth and solidarity envelop her. We can't let it take him! She cried out, dragging her friend closer. Fearful glances flickered between each of them, but the unspoken bond held them together. They all wanted to fight. They all wanted to conquer that darkness, to reclaim the light they could feel just beyond reach. At that moment, the shadows recoiled, sensing their resolve. You think this bond will protect you? The figure known as Hunger rasped from the corners of the darkness. You think your unity matters to a predator such as I? You're wrong! The storyteller shouted defiantly. This unity is powerful. We are stronger together. His voice resonated, cutting through the gloom, igniting spark after spark of courage. It was almost tangible, weaving through the air, reaching the corners of the cabin where shadows lingered. The creature growled in response, the darkness swelled. But something remarkable happened. The light outside flickered again and broke through the cabin windows. A seam of hope illuminated the room, fighting back as though daring the darkness to try its worst. They gasped at the display, but they couldn't lose focus now. Listen! The woman seized the moment, her heart pounding in her ears. If we're going to fight, we need to do it together. She felt everyone's grip tighten around hers. They were a web of humanity in an unforgiving world. Stop feeding it with fear, the storyteller urged. We have to face it, not just the darkness outside, but the shadows inside us. With a collective gasp, they stepped forward, hearts beating as one, drawing strength from each other. What do we give it? One of them faltered but found strength in the connection they shared. We give it love and light, the woman cried. We can't let it turn us against each other. Facing our fears is the only way. In that shared moment of understanding, the air around them shimmered with the energy of their resolve. They could feel something crackling between them, a lifeline, a defense against whatever lay ahead. Together now! The storyteller shouted. Voices rose, intertwining in a chorus that reverberated against the walls. We reject the darkness, and we embrace the light. Light streamed from their united hearts, flooding the cabin with warmth. The shadows writhed and hissed, recoiling from the burgeoning flame that was expanding on their command. They reached for their lost friend, a collective strength binding them tightly enough to pull back the darkness. The creature let out a terrifying growl, a mix of rage and fear as it diminished against their growing power. No! You cannot resist! Hunger screeched, but it was too late. Together, they summoned the courage deep within and channeled it outward, a radiant light sweeping over the chaos, a brilliant force revealing the twisted, gnarled forms of the once lurking shadows. With one final push, the amalgamation of their hopes surged through the air, the walls crumbling under the sheer luminosity. Join us! The woman shouted, and they saw the retreating darkness engulf the malevolent silhouette, its form fading into the abyss. A violent shudder racked the cabin as the entity dissolved. The shadows disbanded like wisping smoke, vanishing into the ether. Silence enveloped them like a comforting blanket. They stood there, eyes wide with disbelief, the realization flooding in. But they had won, for now. Where is he? The woman's voice trembled, as dread coiled in her stomach. They turned slowly toward the center of the cabin, where the man had fallen. Shadows were still there, dancing around him. But they didn't feel venomous anymore. They felt lost. Please, she whispered, fingers brushing against the man's shoulders. Come back! In that very moment, hope flickered like a flickering flame reigniting in the wind. The man gasped and drew in a breath, pulling himself upright. I'm okay, he said, as if awakening from a dream. I felt it. The darkness, it wanted to consume me, but I fought it. Relief washed over them as they embraced him, clinging tightly. He was here, they were free. The cabin breathed a sigh, the air shifting with newfound lightness. They looked around, the weight of their fears transforming into a tapestry of shared strength. They had faced the darkness that dared to divide them and realized the power of their unity. In that quiet victory, they arranged themselves near the windows. The dawn broke outside, ushering the soft blush of daylight back into their world. It sparkled through the trees, illuminating all the beautiful flaws of their experiencing the mundane and the extraordinary, and that moment crystallized the bond that could face any shadow that lurked, any darkness that threatened their hearts. They vowed never to forget the fragile balance of fear and courage, nor the choice they had made to stand as one. And as they stepped outside, the sunlight pouring over them, they felt their past horrors fade into distant memories. Together they would forge a path forward, one step at a time, filled with courage, laughter, and lessons learned, but the shadows may still linger. Just out of sight, waiting for weakness, waiting for that moment when they might be drawn in again. So, what happens when you find yourself face to face with your fears? You must remind yourself to choose the light, because the darkness is deceptive. Thank you for joining us on this heart-stopping journey. Now listen up! You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Share your thoughts. I can't wait to see what you all think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans understand, the strength of this community lies in your support.